This week's theme on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast is home updates that actually add value. Today, I'm talking about the financial considerations when updating your home. Now, earlier this week, I talked about improvements that will actually give you a good return on investment. Unfortunately, there's only a handful of them. And then I also talked about some of the worst return on investment improvements as well. The general rule of thumb here is that the bigger the cost, the bigger the project, the less likely you are to recoup anything even close to the cost in terms of increasing your home's value. Most major remodels are going to cost anywhere from $25,000 to $250,000 or more, depending on the size of the project, part of country you live in, your neighborhood, etc. So this is a huge investment in your home. And with the massive spike of home prices over the last several years, a lot of people, especially if you've been living in your house for a while, maybe you have a lot of equity. If you're sitting on a lot of equity, like a lot of baby boomers, a lot of Gen Xers, a lot of you listening to this podcast, if you've been in your home for a while, you have benefited so much from the recent growth in home values. And if you're sitting on a lot of home equity, this is where many people will turn to first when they're looking to remodel. So if you have $500,000 or $600,000, $700,000 in home equity, which isn't a stretch depending on where you live in the country, taking out, say, $50,000 or $100,000 to do some upgrades, do a major remodel, it seems like a logical choice because it's just this like piggy bank of money that you have that you can tap into for changes. And since it's coming from your home and then you're taking that money and putting it back into your home, that's kind of the conventional wisdom. Like that's what you do when you remodel or update your house. But I would actually argue that that is not a good financial decision at all. And I would never recommend that you take a home equity line of credit in order to update your house. So let me explain this a little bit. So if you are tapping into your home equity or financing a remodel with any kind of debt, it's a losing game because like a car purchase or anything else, you're not going to recoup the full value of the money you spend. So financing with debt makes your return on investment actually a lot worse, especially now that interest rates are much higher. So you have the cost of the remodel. So let's just say you're going to spend $50,000 remodeling your kitchen. Okay, so you have that cost. But you also have the fact that you may not recoup. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll recoup $30,000 in terms of how it translates to increasing your home's value. So you have a net, I don't know how else to classify. So you have a net loss right out the door of like $20,000 on a major project. So if you finance that with debt and you're getting a home equity line of credit, the interest rate on these things is like 9%. So depending on how long it takes you to pay it back, you can easily run these calculations up front and figure out, okay, how much am I financing? How long is it going to take to pay it back? What's the interest rate? And you can figure out, oh, okay, well, I'm going to spend maybe $80,000 all in or $70,000 all in to put $50,000 back into my home. That's only going to increase my home value by maybe $30,000. So you can see how when you add debt to the picture, it really makes the argument much worse that like, oh, you're going to do these updates. It's going to increase the value of your home. No, it's not. It's just going to cost a lot of money. So home equity line of credits were in the low interest rate days. They were in the 3 to 6% range. And so I would argue that even back then with the interest rates, it still wasn't a great idea, even in a low rate environment. But today, when the rates are so much higher, 9% is about the average right now. And so if you don't have the cash available for a remodel, it's best to save. And you know what? If it takes you a couple years or longer, that's okay. I also wouldn't pull the funds from your investment portfolio, especially if you have taxable gains or if you're going to pay income taxes. I wouldn't take a 401k loan either. These are all things that people very commonly use to finance updates to their home, and none of them are a good idea. So if you can't pay for your remodel in cash, save until you can, or maybe compromise on the updates you're making. I talked about several times this week, the smaller the update, the better the return on investment. So you can also do projects slowly, pay as you go, spread it out over a longer period of time. Now, this may not always be practical because your house might look like a war zone depending on the type of remodel, and you don't want to sit like that for like a year or 2 years. I get that. But once you get past the design phase, Sometimes you can take it slower if needed. You don't have to do everything all at once. The bottom line is it's best to save up for what you want rather than paying for it and then some by financing it with debt. The other option that people frequently do to keep the cost down is DIYs. Very common. You have HGTV, like all these things DIY. And generally, the advice that I see and that I would agree with is that you only want to do small cosmetic DIY changes to your home. You want to leave the big stuff, like anything involving flooring installation. You can paint, but I probably wouldn't be ripping out the kitchen island or doing countertops or backsplashes. Leave those things to the experts. Because if you mess it up, not only did you pay for the materials and everything and your time in the first place, which, there is a cost to your time as well. You think you're saving money, but if you botch it and someone else has to come in and redo it, you end up paying for the project twice. You obviously save money over hiring professional help when you DIY, but unless you know what you're doing, it could end up costing you much more in the end. And any money you might save on DIY home updates can also get eaten away quickly if you finance those updates with debt. So whether you're doing DIY, whether you're hiring a professional, again, HELOCs or home equity line of credits, those are best utilized for emergency access to funds, not for eroding your home's value with some pretty new kitchen cabinets. So if someone asked me for financial advice on a home remodel, what I would say is do not do it unless you have the cash or unless you have enough in your investments where a little bit that you take out to put into your home is not going to be a burden or put you in a compromising position down the road. And if you're listening and you're like, Ashley said to not remodel my house, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we want to go into this with our eyes wide open, realizing you're not going to recoup the full cost. And it's going to cost you more money than you're going to get in terms of value. So the last thing you want to do with something that's not going to give you a full return on investment, especially, is finance that with debt. And that's my point today. If you have the cash, great, do it. If you're going to stay in your home for a while, great, do it. Enjoy those updates that you're making. But just know it's not going to add tons of value to your home no matter what you're doing. That's just not the reality. And with the vast majority of projects that you're going to consider to update your home, you are not going to recoup even close to the full cost of those updates. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Mitchikay, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.